Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. This right here, folks, is why people love Trump's leadership. He's not like other politicians, not like Obama, for instance. It's not because he gives good speeches and says the right things. It's not because he kisses babies or plays the politics game. Because President 4547 actually frickin' delivers. Everybody else in the game of politics runs their mouth and virtue signals about helping people and doing all of these things, but then the moment they get elected, they do complete 180s. The classic bait and switch. But when it comes to President Trump, he just frickin' does it. He doesn't posture. He doesn't wait for a media green light. He doesn't wait for his donors or the lobbyists to give him the go-ahead. He sees a problem, he sees a concern of the American people, and then takes it head on, whether the media likes it or not, whether the Democrats are going to riot in the streets or not. And that right now is exactly what we are seeing across the board. From releasing the January 6 hostages to now all of this, the president continues to make good on his promises. And let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so let's start off with the latest announcement from the White House.
Hey guys, Vice President J.D. Vance here, and I want to take you back to something that happened early on when I was a United States Senator. There was a terrible train crash, and then there was a controlled burn of toxic chemicals that went into the atmosphere in East Palestine, Ohio, a little town in the northeastern corner of the state of Ohio. What happened then is that people got very worried, and I've been to East Palestine a number of times, and they're very worried about what are the long-term impacts of these chemicals in the water, in the air. What effect does it have on their kids and grandkids after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years of exposure? And the crazy thing is, number one, we didn't have a good answer to that question. Science had never actually tried to understand what the long-term exposure of these trace chemicals would do to people. And the second crazy thing is that as much as I tried as a United States Senator to work with the Biden administration, they refused to do anything to actually study the effects of these long-term exposures on the people of East Palestine.
East Palestine community members immediately began experiencing a range of initial health symptoms, including headaches and respiratory and skin and eye irritations, prompting concerns about the broader long-term impacts on maternal and child health. At the urging of Vice President, the National Institute of Health, under my direction, has launched a 5-year, $10 million research initiative to address health outcomes stemming from this calamity. This is the first large-scale, coordinated, multi-year federal study focused specifically on the long-term health impacts of the East Palestine disaster.
The purpose and goal of the NIH, the mission, is to advance the health and well-being of the American people, and this is a concrete way that we're going to do that. The NIH is working to ensure that the people of East Palestine and the surrounding communities are listened to, cared for, and they get the answers they deserve. Today, the NIH has established a program to coordinate health-related research with public health department needs and clinical practice to respond to the health effects of the derailment. The train was carrying hazardous materials, including vinyl chloride, butyl acrylate, ethylene glycol, and benzene residue, and community members have experienced a range of health issues following the incident. The NIH's multidisciplinary research program will focus on public health tracking and surveillance of the community's health conditions to support healthcare decisions and preventative measures.
It's been years that people have been begging. There's been demands for somebody to take a look at what happened in East Palestine, Ohio. There was a train derailment during the Biden years that's essentially poisoned a town. And do you remember what the Biden administration did? Absolutely frickin' nothing. It took weeks of making noise, weeks of political pressure and activism just to get Pete Buttigieg to show up there. And then, of course, what did he do? He wore the hard hat, slapped on the high vis, and showed up for a frickin' photo op, doing basically nothing of value. Then, of course, the leftist media tried to memory hole the whole situation, and it was clear from the very start the media didn't care, the Biden administration didn't care, first off because of the optics, and secondly, because it happened in a district that voted for Donald Trump, the same way they didn't care about hurricane victims in North Carolina for the same reason. But now, thanks to President Trump and J.D. Vance, that changes today. They're launching a full investigation into the long-term health effects of this disaster. And again, we're seeing a very clear trend here. It's not just lip service. You don't just get talk from the Trump administration, you get follow through. President Trump promised that he wouldn't forget those people, and now he's proving it yet again. But that right there is not the only win this week. We've also got this. The Make America Healthy Again movement is actually delivering health wins.
Big food brands are making changes to their products as the Trump administration pushes to make America healthy again. So take a look. We start with General Mills. They're removing artificial food dyes from U.S. cereals and the foods that they send to our schools, K through 12 schools. That's going to happen by next summer. This is going to happen by the end of 2027. They're removing all artificial dyes completely by the end, like I said, it's 2027. They make Trick cereal, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Cheerios, Rice Chex, the things that are probably in your pantry. Also, Kraft and Heinz, they're saying goodbye to the artificial dyes by the end of 2027. Includes Jell-O, Capri Suns, Kool-Aid, and Crystal Light. Then the In-N-Out Burger, they removed artificial dyes from strawberry shakes and pink lemonade, and they replaced it with the beet juice and turmeric instead. Their focus is on the red 40 and the yellow 5. Also, the high fructose corn syrup, they're replacing that with natural sugar. Then let's take Steak and Shake. Instead, they're using the beef tallow fat. We've heard RFK Jr. talk a lot about this. Instead of the vegetable oils to make their French fries, their onion rings, and their chicken tenders. And the tallow fat, it's still unsaturated, but it is a lot healthier than the heavily processed seed oils. Then all the spices in your cabinets. McCormick, many of those in my cabinet are made by this brand, working to remove artificial food dyes and sodiums. Their focus is on the red dye number 3, which has been linked to cancer concerns.
What started as Make America Healthy Again has now turned into real pressure on the food industry, and it seems to be working. Kraft Heinz, General Mills, In-N-Out, McCormick, all caving to the pressure and removing harmful chemicals from their products. And why do you think that is? Well, it's because this administration is putting actions behind their words. President Trump didn't just bring RFK Jr. in so he could help him win during the campaign season, only to ditch him immediately after winning. He gave him a cabinet position, which sent a very clear message that this administration is taking the fight straight to the corporate interests. And you know, it's funny because the left is always going on and on. They're going to crack down on corporations, protect public health. But when push comes to shove, they're all bought and paid for by the lobbyist groups. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, who's supposed to be the evil capitalist billionaire, well, he brings in a guy like RFK Jr. and all of a sudden the whole food industry starts scrambling. Again, that's called leadership. That's called making good on your promises. It's not just campaign rhetoric. They actually mean it. This is an administration that fights for the people's interests, regardless of what the donor class says. You know, I know the left-wing trope about Donald Trump is that he only cares about himself, but there's one common denominator here. President Trump governs for the people. That is the common theme in pretty much everything he does. He doesn't care about the optics. He doesn't care what CNN is going to say. He cares about the American people. You know, we don't see this president wasting time virtue signaling. We don't see him wasting time with empty gestures. The man is systematic. He sees a problem, he tries to find a solution, and then immediately executes. Just like we saw with the southern border. He saw the problem and then said, we're going to build a wall, and then did everything in his power despite Congress obstructing him to get that job done. And notice a lot of the stuff that he does, we tend to have the same common reaction. The East Palestine investigation should have happened years ago. Tackling big food corruption, long overdue. But nobody had the guts to do it until this president showed up. At least that's the way I see it. Everybody else talks, everybody else chirps, but then never actually does anything. Meanwhile, this president leads with action. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys on this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.